Hello, everybody. Welcome to Square Off. I am Jimmy Mathis, sitting in for Richard Sher. He'll be back with us shortly. Guys, a jam-packed show today, a lot to get to. Let's get right to the panel and welcome attorney Chris Kennedy, former Mayor Sheila Dixon, Shannon Wright, pastor and also former mayoral candidate, and the professor of rhetoric, Rick Vatz. Thank you guys very much for joining us. Appreciate it.
Good to be here.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you guys very much. It takes a lot to politically unite this country. It looks like President Donald Trump may have actually done that. That comes to the gift of a $400 million Boeing 747 from Qatar to replace Air Force One, or at least one of them. There's multiple Air Force Ones. Any aircraft that the president is on is actually Air Force One. This has been highly contested by both sides of the party. Even some MAGA supporters question this gift. Like I said, it would replace Air Force One during the president's term and then would go to the Trump library. I want to get your thoughts on it. Let's kick it off with Chris Kennedy. Chris, what are your thoughts?
You know, Ted Cruz said it best. This is a significant espionage and surveillance problem issue. There's 170 miles of wiring inside this Qatar jet. That would be me driving my car from here to Norfolk, Virginia. And it takes about 2 years to rip everything out and then refit it with all the secret stuff that goes into it. The biggest is the mid-air refueling, the missile defense, communications, and a number of other things that we don't even know about. And that would cost upwards of about $1 billion to do all that. And then what? I just have a bad feeling that Donald Trump wants to use this as his personal jet when he leaves the White House, and when he's done using it, then give it to his library. So it's just too dangerous. It's too expensive. And the last thing I'll say is there's a shortage of aviation technicians with security clearance who could even do the job, because the ones that exist are already busy refitting the two Air Force Ones that have been in progress for a while with Boeing.
That have been backlogged from Boeing. Pastor Wright, what are your thoughts?
Well, I think from a security perspective, it's not the best idea. Any other country would want to be able to have ears, and to be able to get into all the nooks and crannies, all the wiring, all the places where ears could be hidden is going to be a challenge. So I think from a security perspective, it's not a great idea. I think the visual of taking a gift of that significance from a foreign country is not a good idea as well. I do understand that the fact that Boeing has been backed up for so long is why President Trump would be looking at other options. So I think we have to fix the Boeing issue, as well as really give some second, third, and maybe 10th thought on whether or not you want to accept a gift like that.
And Sheila Dixon?
So I don't think he should accept a gift, aside from the fact that the security issue and what it's going to cost to deal with all the security pieces. One that I just think it sends a bad message, and he should say thank you, but no thank you. But because he likes the glitter and he likes, just his first foreign trip to the Middle East, he was just so fascinated with all the gold and everything they had to offer. I just think it sends a bad message, and I don't think he should accept it.
And Professor Vatz?
This has happened simultaneously with the most successful foreign trip we may have had in the last 30 to 50 years. And I think that not too many people are going to focus on this. Look at Representative Jim Himes, who is from Connecticut and he's a Democrat. He says he thinks that Trump has handled foreign policy pretty well. I don't think people are going to focus on this much. Do I think it's wrong? Yes. I think it's anti-constitution. I think he shouldn't do it. But I think that this is such a small matter in contrast with the major foreign policy moves that he has made in the last 4 days. I think it just falls to nothingness.
And Chris, I'll come back to you, to Professor Vatz's point. It is against the Constitution. The Constitution clearly states that no one holding office can profit from that office without the consent of Congress. Obviously, Congress did not have a vote in this. Chris, you were talking about just the logistics of getting this aircraft to Air Force One status. And of course, with it coming from a foreign adversary, it needs to be stripped down to studs out, basically, and then rewired and rebuilt. So as far as getting a $400 million gift, when it's all said and done, not really sure it's that much of a gift at all. At the end of the day, it may be a net cost. Um, and I think that's also a big concern beyond the optics of it, just the logistics of it.
Yeah, you quoted the emoluments clause quite well, Article 1, Section 9, Clause 8. And this is not the first time this has come up with this man. I will agree that from a trade standpoint, his trip to the Middle East has been very successful, not just for our country, but for the individual CEOs who accompanied him and did deals with Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and an unexpected trip to the UAE as well. The problem I have, though, is that before he showed up there, his sons were in those same countries cutting deals on behalf of the Trump family. For instance, in Qatar, Eric Trump, 2 weeks before his father arrived, cut a deal for a major golf resort, beachside, multi-billion-dollar deal, hotel, condos, etc. And it's quite obvious that even the appearance of impropriety is there, and the influence peddling and decision making is on its face so apparent to be improper. But I think Trump doesn't care anymore. And as a lot of senators have pointed out, the fact that he's doing it in broad daylight is trying to fool some people into thinking, well, it must be okay because he's not sneaking around and doing it. But it is wrong. And I'm opposed to the Trump family benefiting and grifting off every move that he makes.
And Sheila, I'll come to you on this to Professor Vatz's point. He did just have a very successful overseas trip, and you look at the strategy of Donald Trump. It's very much distraction. Governing is different than the politics of it at some level. But when you start messing with Air Force One, and this isn't a follow the shiny thing. I think he's being very serious about this. This does get into legitimate national security issues. Does this maybe overshadow, kind of reverse of what Rick just said? Does it overshadow maybe what was a successful trip overseas?
So I think it does to some degree, but to be honest with you, based on this new president, I now tend to watch very little news. And so I wasn't aware of how successful the trip was. I know that there were a lot of meetings that took place, but for me right now, the biggest issue is this game that he's playing with the tariffs and the impact that it's having on regular citizens and what they're now feeling. Gas has not gone down. Actually, it's gone up. The price of food has not gone down. It's still going up. So there are basic fundamental things that I think we're ignoring as relates to the average citizen and trying to maintain a household. And so you just tell me the success in this trip that's going to have an impact on the average citizen that's now bills are going to be high as relates to what's happening at the federal level, at the state level, and the local level.
And Pastor, coming to you, Qatar is they are an ally. However, they do support terrorism. Donald Trump in his first term was one of the most outspoken about it. They have buddied up with China. They buddied up with Hamas. Again, not a terrorist state, but they definitely play in that arena. Is that concerning?
You know, it's definitely concerning. But you know what? We live in a global society today. And sometimes, you know, that phrase, keep your friends close and your enemies closer. You really do need to have eyes in every pocket, in every corner. And I think that is something that we're seeing. And I think that is something that we need to see more of, just because when you look at how many countries are against each other, the India and Pakistan issue, the Israel issue with multiple folk. I mean, when you see how many hotspots there are around the world, the more friends you have in different places, the better to be able to not be caught off guard.
Rick, the great Ron Smith once said, you can't take the politics out of politics. You specialize in rhetoric. Just the optics of this. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think also we have to look at a classic problem in assessing foreign policy, and that is short-term versus long-term. One of the points that Trump has made convincingly over the last couple of weeks is, don't just look at what an effect is short-term, let's look at the long-term. And he appears to be correct. So I think that Trump has been just successful beyond words on this. with the UAE, he's got a pledge over 10 years of $1.4 trillion. He's got a pledge from Qatar of 42 billion. Yes, Qatar has been a questionable player in foreign policy, but he appears to be on top of everything. And when you are winning and winning and winning, you tend to get overconfident. When you get overconfident, you tend to make mistakes, sometimes small mistakes. That's why I think Trump is making a mistake with this deal, but he also was going to get away with it. I mean, the fact that this plane
Right.
is $400 billion. Yeah, okay.
And Chris, I'm going to give you the last word on this, and then we'll move on. But you're an attorney, and one of the most important things in law is precedent. If this happens and he accepts this gift, forget whether this is good or not on this specific deal. How dangerous is that precedent of accepting almost a $500 million gift from a foreign country?
It's strikingly worrisome. Russia and our country back 70 years ago started to devise ways to hide listening devices inside small objects. And imagine how good the world has gotten these days. So you would literally have to strip everything out of this plane and to reach the point, like, what is the point of even doing this? And then the cost of having to do it, the delay in completing the other two Air Force One jets that are in the progress, and it'll take even longer. The biggest thing that I'm worried about is that he's going to try to keep this plane and then be able to use it as his own personal thing. And the last thing I'll say is that I do credit him for cutting deals on behalf of the private sector on this trip. Etihad Airways cut a deal with Boeing to buy 170 jets, which is tremendous. It's the same airline and same ownership group that owns the Manchester City Soccer Club, one of the richest in the world. So I applaud the private sector aspect of this.
Sounds good. Everybody hang tight. Howard, the voice of Square Off. How you doing, Howard?
I'm doing great. Dr. Kelly Gagan is a well-respected, board-certified podiatrist and heel specialist. Foot problems can happen at any age, and Dr. Gagan knows that the appearance of your feet matter just as much as correcting any problem you may be experiencing. And if unsightly toenails embarrass you to wear sandals or open-toed shoes, you may be a candidate for the safe laser, painless method of treating this that goes right to the cause. And believe me, over-the-counter treatments don't work. So give Dr. Gagan a call at 410-753-4422 to set up an appointment. And Baltimore's a great diner town, and Double T diners are always voted #1 in reader polls. TT stands for totally terrific. For breakfast, lunch, or dinner, you can't beat the enormous menu selection that'll bring you back again and again. There's Double T locations on Route 40 West, Perry Hall, White Marsh, Bel Air, Laurel, Annapolis, Pasadena, and the EC Diner in Ellicott City. Plus, try By the Docks in Middle River for their Monday night lobster specials. All part of the Double T family. Tell them you heard about them on Square Off. Back to you, Jim.
Thank you, Howard. Donald Trump catching a lot of attention also last week. He didn't say that he was endorsing higher taxes on the rich, but said that he wouldn't necessarily oppose it. Obviously, the rhetoric is the rich don't pay their fair share. Progressive taxation was a big issue that the president ran on both terms. Again, not endorsing it, but definitely kind of navigating a little bit away from what his official stance on this has been. Sheila, Dixon, kind of your thoughts on the politics of this. Again, in all fairness, the president also said if the Republican Party did this, there probably would be consequences. But the fact that he's not adamantly denouncing it, what are your thoughts on that?
So, I mean, I think it only helps us to get to where we need to go as relates to the federal budget. Of course, with all the cuts that's happening, I mean, the rich can afford it. The rich are the ones who tend to pay the least amount of taxes because they have different mechanisms to assist them when it comes to paying taxes. It's the middle folks that suffer the most. And so I support charging taxes in this upcoming bill. But I don't think it's going to happen. I think it's just all talk because I think the Republican Party is opposed to it. You got an election coming up in another year for Congress people, et cetera. I don't think it's going to go anywhere.
So, Pastor, you ran for office. The rhetoric is the rich don't pay their fair share. And Trump has acknowledged, not that they don't pay their fair share, but has been outspoken against that rhetoric. The fact that he's not denouncing this, it's definitely a deviation from where he's been in the past.
So I think from an economic standpoint, you really have to look at what makes dollars and cents, what makes good dollars and cents, and what people can live with. Personally, I think we need to move towards a uniform tax code. I think that way everyone is paying what they can bear based on their own personal economics. I think getting to a place where we are doing that takes a lot of this conversation away. But as far as right now in the current atmosphere and charging folks higher taxes that are perceived to be able to afford it, I think you got to go where the money is. And unless you want to take it out of the pocket of the folks at the bottom of the economic food chain that really don't have it.
So, Rick, what the past two guests said is sort of exactly what was going to my mind on this, which is it's not a matter of we haven't cut enough. I know we just went through Doge, but that we need more income, which is the antithesis of what Trump, MAGA, the Republican Party has stood for in the past. From a rhetoric standpoint, does this surprise you at all?
Well, no, the focus is always we need more income. What there should be focused on why we need more income. Let me just say one thing, by the way, about our previous conversation. One of the things that summarizes that, just to make a quick point, is that the administration believes that economic trade promotes stability. There's been a lot written about that by economists, and that is the critical point. If that's the case, then what Trump is doing is very, very important, and the problems he's having with Qatar are very unimportant. But with respect to taxes, you can always say the rich should pay more. And in fact, if you start overtaxing, they're going to find ways to avoid it, and some of them will move out of the country. I think we should stop focusing on that and focusing on precisely why we need more money. Look at education. We always need more money. No matter what happens, the problem is always solved by we need more money. And I think it's fallacious.
So, Chris, I'll come to you on this. Again, Trump on the campaign trail ran on fraud, abuse, waste. That was the whole thing with Musk and Doge, that we're going to cut our way to prosperity. So whether you believe that's the right strategy or not, that is what the message was on the campaign trail. To even float the idea out about raising taxes in a progressive way, did that surprise you at all?
No. And, he said a month ago that he opposed the idea of increasing taxes on the wealthy. So this is, to me, nothing more than a throwaway comment that he's made. But if you take his theory to its logical extreme, that people earning 2.5 million or above would now have a tax bracket of 39.6%, that would net $8.2 billion this year alone. And it would net even more next year and escalating far beyond. And it would really bite into the $38 trillion deficit that we have. So the only way this will succeed is a combination of making those folks pay their fair share. And by the way, the existing tax breaks that exist will enable every one of those folks, if it were ever to pass and become law, to escape paying it because of other tax loopholes that already exist, such as capital gains and real estate investment depreciation. So there would really be no impact from it all. But they do need to pay more, and there needs to be a curb on a lot of spending. So it's a combination of all those things.
All right, guys,
Why do they need to pay more, Chris? Chris, take that point. They need to pay more. Why do they need to pay more?
Well, do you think Donald Trump should have paid any federal taxes over the past 2 decades? Because he hasn't.
I'd have to look at Donald Trump. I'd have to look at precisely what losses he's had. But tell me why the general point they have to pay more is unsupported by for what? For what should they pay more?
Well, first of all, they get the benefit.
Every American has tax obligation.
Guys, Sheila, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because first of all, they get the benefit of tax cuts in ways that the average citizen does not benefit from. I mean, at one point, we were able to write off credit card percentages. Now, other areas, now the average citizen can only write off if they own property. Other than that, you can't write off anything else. You can't write off college tuition. If you have kids in school, you can't hardly write off medical. You can't hardly write off anything. But they have so many areas that they can. So where's that balance? So even though they make more, they still gain more than what we do. And so there has to be a balance. Cuts have to happen. Yes. You have to look at waste. You have to look at fraud. But you just don't just blankly do it and not analyze to look at where you're losing services. But
Chris,
the rich do need to pay more.
I'll give the final word on this, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this is all part of the one big beautiful bill that he's putting forth, and Johnson's bill. I mean, he's herding cats in the House, but there've already been several Republican senators who've said that this reconciliation bill is dead on arrival in the Senate. Johnson, who I bet, and Hawley. Both of them, I believe, are running for re-election next year. So it could just be talking points where they want to get it out there that they're opposed to it before Trump strong arms them into signing it and voting for it anyway. So he's going to get that thing through. The question is whether there'll be any adjustments made to it. And I think there should be. And I think there needs to be more fairness for the average American and make the uber wealthy pay their fair share, which they just haven't done.
On the other side, on the other side of the break, we're going to switch gears, talk a little local politics. City State's Attorney Ivan Bates coming out saying when it comes to juvenile crime, we start holding parents accountable. But right now, let's go to Howard, the voice of Square Off. How you doing, Howard?
Thank you, Jimmy. The law firm of Barry Glazer specializes in personal injury, medical malpractice, and nursing home neglect. His creative TV commercials have made Barry very recognizable because he tells it like it is. Barry and his team have an in-house doctor and nurse on staff. In fact, you should call Barry before you call the insurance company. Barry gets you top dollars from the insurance company. He's that good. So give the law firm of Barry Glazer a call at 410-547-8568 and let them know you heard about him on Square Off. With so many cars on the road and distracted drivers everywhere, auto accidents are happening. And if you're experiencing an accident, or if you've experienced an accident, the insurance companies can't tell you where to take your car to get it fixed. That's why more and more drivers are trusting their auto repairs and maintenance to leading edge auto body and mechanical repair. They work on all makes and models and offer free pickup and delivery anywhere in the Baltimore area. So call them at 410-443-6433 or visit them at 5807 Falls Road in Mount Washington. They make your car look and run like new again. Now back to you, Jim.
Ivan Bates, City State's Attorney who replaced Marilyn Mosby, coming out last week. First of all, he's been very tough on crime with a main focus on juvenile crime. Department of Juvenile Services has been under immense scrutiny over the last year on the handling of juveniles. Ivan Bates saying that right now when a juvenile is released, I guess there's a box on the paperwork that the parents sign that basically says if this continues to be an issue, they're going to hold parents accountable. It's very vague and ambiguous on what it means. But the fact that Ivan Bates is even talking about this shows that it's one step closer to holding parents accountable. It's been a highly contested topic. Chris, I'll go to you first just as an attorney on this. What are the legality of this, of holding somebody accountable for a crime that they did not commit, which would be the parent?
Yeah, I support Bates on this. I think, and the specific law that he's looking at to impose upon the parents and guardians is contributing to the delinquency of a minor, which carries a maximum fine of $2,500 and upwards of 3 years in jail. And that is the stick that needs to be out there to make these folks do a better job of keeping their children or their guardies, if you will, in line. And it is an ever expanding problem, particularly with the subject of felonies and in to be more specific, robberies. That's a big problem. There's been a decline in shooting and murders, right, but this problem needs to get handled. The problem is the guy, Vincent Schiraldi, that's running juvenile services, is a very liberal progressive guy and thinks that, any of this sort of thing is wrong. And there have been a lot of calls for him to be removed because he feels that, not every minor is a delinquent. It needs to be, prosecuted in circuit court. But he needs to back off on that.
Yeah, and the governor has stood by Schiraldi. Ms. Dixon, I'm going to go to you. You were mayor of Baltimore, a major U.S. city. You intimately dealt with the crime issue. I mean, you know this better than anybody on the panel. Your thoughts of the remarks from Ivan Bates?
So I agree with Ivan Bates as far as holding guardians and parents accountable. I think that juvenile crime, even though murders and shootings are down, juvenile crime is still out of control, not only just in the city, but now in the state. I mean, this recent incident, the fact that these 4 kids from Laurel stole a car, drove to Howard County, a woman is dead. The young man that they had, the only person that they had, you don't know who he is, you don't know what his prior record is, you know, you have no information about it. And here, an innocent person is dead as a result of that. Summer is coming. Things are picking up, and we've got to get a handle on it. And parents and guardians, I mean, if you don't document that you have tried everything you can to provide, to find resources to support you and help you, because there are parents whose hands are tied and they've asked for help. I think you have to look at those cases and figure out where the disconnect is. But we've got to do more, and juveniles have to be held accountable. It's just unfortunate that DGS and because I know the police commissioner is frustrated.
Sure.
Ivan Bates has an event coming up. It's going to focus on nothing but juvenile crimes, and so I think families have to be held accountable.
Professor Vatz, I know you're chomping at the bit. Go ahead.
Ivan Bates spoke in my class in my last term of teaching at Towson. I think he's wonderful. He's one of the few politicians in Baltimore City that I would say is wonderful. And I think you can divide the Democrats, the Democratic electorate between the Bates Democrats and the Mosby Democrats. And I think he is just a breath of fresh air. And I think all the diminution of violence is attributable to him practically in Baltimore. And I just hope Baltimore realizes that he is the light that they should follow.
And Pastor Wright, I'll give you the final word on this.
I think that you have to hold the parents accountable, the parents and the guardians. We have to look at what leads these kids to be running amok like this. And we need to try and put things in place to prevent the problem as opposed to cure it. But I think Ivan Bates' philosophy of holding parents accountable, or at least opening that door, is absolutely necessary. I don't see the guidance from our mayor. I see the police commissioner's hands tied by the mayor. I see the governor handicapping us further by insisting on keeping Vincent Schiraldi in place. I think the only outlet that we have is hoping and praying for and over Ivan Bates that he can actually have the intestinal fortitude to continue to stand up to actually bring some safety to our city.
All right.
Well, not only just the city, because you have to keep in mind, this is not only a city issue, it's a statewide. And you have many states' attorneys across the state who also feel the same way, that more has to be done. And it's like the state legislators are just, I mean, it's like they live in a whole different world from where the average citizen lives here in the state.
Which is why we have to hope that Ivan is able to continue to stand up, because it's as if they don't see what's going on in our city or their own.
Jimmy, one other key point, real quick.
Yep.
Real quick. The other problem Bates is having is that Schiraldi is the one that's deciding whether to release offenders or repeat offenders without Bates being able to weigh in on this. And I think that needs to change. I think it should be a joint decision, because there's a lot of these kids that are getting off just because Schiraldi believes in rehab, not prosecution.
And he's been very outspoken about that. Guys, we only got about 30 seconds each, but tomorrow, Saturday, will be the 150th running of the Preakness Stakes at Old Hilltop before they demolish it and rebuild it. It's a tradition here in Baltimore. I'm very partial to anybody who knows me knows I love horse racing, but the significance of this being a little bit of a end of an era for Pimlico, and also a rebirth of the next traditions to be made. Rick, I'll let you go first. Try to keep it to about 30 seconds, guys.
Well, I'm a horse racing expert, of course, and the horse that I would pick would be journalism. And he placed before, and now I think he's going to win. I think journalism.
There you go. Came in second at the Derby. Pastor Wright?
I had an opportunity to go to Pimlico only once. And I'm glad that I had that opportunity since, as you said, this is a chapter closing and a new one opening. Unfortunately, the weather seems to be holding to tradition. Yep. Hopefully it will clear up so that folks don't have to wear mud boots with their finery for the race.
Chris?
Yeah, I think it's exciting that Pimlico is being redone to try to finally turn it into a year-round facility. Belmont's doing the same thing. They're having theirs at Saratoga while they redo it. I really think the Preakness ought to be another week later. I think that third week we'll have more Kentucky Derby horses competing in the Preakness. And if Belmont wants to show up 2 weeks later or move theirs a week later, I think that's great as well. But the most important thing for tomorrow is 1 ounce bourbon whiskey, 1 ounce vodka, 1 ounce peach schnapps, 2 ounces orange juice, 2 ounces sour mix, orange sliced cherry, the perfect black-eyed Susan. There you go.
Oh, and you had the privilege of being married in this great city. When here, just
yeah,
your thoughts.
I always get excited about going to the Preakness. I don't like the rain, so I pray that it doesn't. I haven't decided what my outfit's going to be tomorrow. Yeah, it's going to be hot. But it's funny because I base my bets on horses by their names. And so when I heard journalism during the last race, I said, oh, I think I have to put them on my list. So I definitely need to look at the odds for that. But I think this is a great opportunity, not just for the rebirth of a new Pimlico, but the community around it is going to also benefit. And we have to make sure those that are on those various boards that have been created, that they keep that in mind, that you have a community around there that also has to benefit from this new birth of Pimlico. But I'm excited. It's going to be hot tomorrow too. But.
Well, I will see you out there. Sheila Dixon, thank you very much. Chris Kennedy, always a pleasure. Pastor Wright, thank you very much. And Rick Vatz, obviously, always a great honor. Thank you, everybody. Really appreciate the opportunity. Howard, thank you. Everybody have a great weekend. Check Square Off at squareoff.net every week for the most updated episodes. Be safe. Take care, everybody. See you. Bye.
Nice job, Jimmy. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, you should have